You wanted the best. You've got the best podcast. The hottest podcast in the world. The Chris Voss Show, the preeminent podcast with guests so smart you may experience serious brain bleed. The CEOs, authors, thought leaders, visionaries, and motivators. Get ready. Strap yourself in. Keep your hands, arms, and legs inside the vehicle at all times, because you're about to go on a monster education roller coaster with your brain. Now, here's your host, Chris Voss.
Hey folks, it's Voss here from thechrisvossshow.com. There you go, ladies and gentlemen. There are latest things, and that makes it official. Welcome to the big show. For over 16 years and 2,300 episodes, we bring you the Chris Voss Show, the CEOs, the billionaires, the White House presidential advisors, the Pulitzer Prize winners, all of the most brilliant minds on the show with the most amazing books and journeys, coaches, sharing you with their stories of life. As we always say, stories are the fabric of our lives, and they share with you their blueprints of how they overcame adversity, the different issues they came up with and stuff like that. So as always, refer the show to your family, friends, and relatives. Go to goodreads.com/Chris Voss, LinkedIn.com/Chris Voss, Chris Voss1 on the TikTok and all those crazy places on the internet. Today we have an amazing young man on the show. We're going to be talking about his hot new book that he's got coming out here shortly in a while. We're going to tease it out a little bit, let's put it that way. And we're going to talk about his book from June 21st, 2022. It is called Leading with Heart, 5 Conversations That Unlock Creativity, Purpose, and Results. We have Edward Sullivan on the show joining us. He has a co-author on the book, When You're Searching for It, of John Baird. So just make sure you get that right when you're checking it. He is an author, adventure, surfer, and CEO coach. He is the CEO of Velocity Coaching. He helps his clients with heart-led cultures, deliver world-class results, and not lose their souls in the process. Damn, I already sold mine. I sold it for this podcast and $5. His clients have included the CEOs of Bombas, Clear, Geico, Geneva, Harry's, Hatch, Hinge, Sweetgreen, Webflow, and many more. Do we get paid for the ads on that? Edward holds an MBA from Wharton School, an MPA from the Harvard Kennedy School, and his work has been featured in the New York Times, the Washington Post, Fortune, Forbes, Fast Company, Harvard Business Review, Inc., USA Today, and now his pinnacle of achievement on the Chris Voss Show. Welcome to the show. Absolutely. How are you, Edward?
I'm doing great, Chris. Thank you so much. And, I realize we've got to cut that bio down a little bit. It starts reading like a litany. Yeah.
It is there is a lot of things there, but it's a good
lot of things.
Yeah. So you're the co-author of Leading with Your Heart. Give us your .coms where people can find you on the interwebs.
Absolutely. Well, the book is at leadingwithheartbook.com. I'm on social media at Edward L. Sullivan. And my company, Velocity Coaching, is just velocitycoaching.com.
There you go. So give us a 30,000 overview. What's inside the new book?
Yeah. So the big idea here is that running a company is hard, and hiding all of your emotions makes it even harder, right?
What are these emotions you speak of?
I know. What are these emotions, right? It's funny, Chris, we've got a work self and a home self, right? At least that's what we've been told for a long time, that we should leave our emotions at home. We should leave all of our troubles at home and just go to work, get things done. But that's not really how human beings function, right? So the big idea here with Leading with Heart is we should be having more emotionally authentic conversations in the workplace. Conversations about what we really need to feel creative, conversations about what fears might be holding us back, what we really want out of the job, what we really want in life, so we can get to the truth faster, develop great products faster, and ultimately serve our customers better.
There you go. And so you talk about how the mindset behind leadership, behind business, there used to be kind of this, one of my favorite analogies is the IBM man, the guy who shows up to work, everyone wears the same uniform.
That's right.
And yada, yada, yada. There's no personality. There's really no emotion, when you really think about it, because everyone just wore black.
That's exactly right.
It was like going to a funeral, when you think about it, actually come to think of it, every day at work. And now there's colors and there's diversity and all that stuff that goes on in a thing. And I think why is the time for this now, that we need to start leading with the heart, where leaders need to have more empathy? We can't just be cold, narcissistic, dark triad, Machiavellian,
Yeah.
sociopathic bastards all the time as leaders. Elon Musk.
I mean, some
Excuse
people
me.
are still trying. Some people are still trying their best to make that work, right? But I think you used an interesting word. That people were walking around all dressed in black in their black suits. I think they felt dead inside. Is really ultimately what happened.
Mm.
And what we've realized is that people were spending 50-60% of their energy at work pretending.
Oh.
Right? They were spending most of their energy hiding what was really going on, pretending, trying their best to exemplify this mythical executive presence you've probably heard a lot about, right? Executive presence is that IBM company man, the sharp suit, the perfect handshake, the perfect hair. And what we've realized over the years is that in this day and age, in today's market, people want authentic presence, not executive presence. And authentic presence is, who are you really showing up as today? What are you bringing into the office? How do we work through that? How do we use whatever's going on for you as fuel to help you do your work even better, as opposed to something you need to be like quietly managing in the background and pretending like it's not happening?
Yeah. It's important to connect with people. I used to call it touching the hearts and minds of people, and then
There you go.
HR said I couldn't use the word touching anymore. But but no, it really was that. I would go around my office and check in with people. Hey, Bob,
Yeah.
the sales guy,
Yeah.
how you doing today, man? How's things at home? You basically do a checkup on them to make sure that they're what do we used to call it, the checkup from the neck up sort of thing.
Yeah. The chicken.
Um,
Exactly.
yeah, so you check in with them, and you also let them know that you care, that you gave a shit.
Yeah.
I cared about my salespeople because they were worth a lot of money. No, I'm just
That's
kidding.
right.
Uh,
But you check in with them, right? In terms of like, do you have everything you need, right?
exactly.
Right now, is anything going on with you that's a blocker, right? As opposed to, did you get the memo? When can I expect that report? You're framing the conversation around, do you have everything you need to get this job done? I like to say that when a flower doesn't bloom, we don't put it on a performance improvement plan, right?
Yeah.
We check its environment. We make sure, does it have enough water, enough fertilizer, enough sunlight? And for some reason, we're not really doing that with the people we work with, right? We just try to turn the screws down a little bit, hold them more accountable. Obviously, I need to be harder on Chris this time, as opposed to, what's going on with Chris? Maybe Chris needs a little bit more water, a little bit more sunshine.
And and that's very true. I found that with my salespeople, it was even more important, even telemarketers, but with my salespeople that would do the sales, the one thing I learned about being a CEO is I had to be a psychologist too.
Absolutely.
I remember one of my salespeople walked into my office one day and he goes, Chris, I joined your company and I thought you guys were full of shit on how much money I could make as a salesman. And I'm kicking ass and taking names. And we were one of the few companies that provided leads at the time. And most of the salespeople that we hired that worked for other companies didn't have leads. So we kind of had a system that could force them to be successful. I mean, unless you couldn't sell, then you wouldn't sell. But I remember he came in one time to me and he goes, Chris, I'm having trouble selling. And I go, what's going on? And I'm thinking, why is this my problem? But you're the CEO and the entrepreneur. Everything's your problem.
Right.
You're the CEO and the janitor. And so he said to me, he goes, I can't get motivated to sell. And I go, what's going on? He goes, well, I'm making like 20 grand a month with you, and I've never made that kind of money in my life ever. My head's blowing up. I got a new car. I got a new computer. I can afford my own house for the first time in years. He had a lot of kids. I think it was like 6 or 10 kids. It was in Utah.
Wow.
If that makes sense. And he was behind on his child support. And he goes, for the very first time, I'm caught up in my child support. I got all my bills paid. I got all my shits right. And I can't sell anymore. I can't get motivated to sell.
I see. So he's only motivated by the money.
He's motivated by the money and being behind. I got to catch up. I got to catch up. He finally caught up. And and his head was blowing up, and so I had to go in and we had to try and fix it. There's a million of those stories I have of where I had salespeople that all of a sudden they got some sort of jam in their brain, and we had to go in there and do some mental surgery and play psychologists.
Yeah, yeah. Well,
So
Chris,
yeah.
I think that's also the problem when people feel that they're only motivated by money. And when they have enough money to cover their bases and to cover the child support, they're like, where's my motivation? And that's when really like the big question around purpose comes in. And that's question number 5 in the book, Leading with Heart, is what is your purpose? If people have something bigger than themselves to believe in, they'll put in the extra hours, right? If they believe in serving the customer, if they believe in this larger vision that you have. And, I don't think every company is going to have some big, lofty vision, right? Or sense of purpose. If you run a dry cleaning store, you run a dry cleaning store and it's a nice, simple service for the neighborhood. And you get the sense of purpose from the relationships you have with people in the neighborhood, right? As opposed to we are revolutionizing dry cleaning, whatever that would mean, right? And I think people need to connect to what's the larger story here, as opposed to I'm here to do a job, to get money, to pay my bills. And as soon as my bills are paid, I don't want to do the job. There's something missing there, right?
Definitely. Yeah. And there was all sorts of issues we had, great stories. I mean, there were issues with home and family and stuff, and and I'm like, so I have to do the marriage counseling for you now because that's part of my job.
But that's the funny thing, you do actually.
Yeah,
I just got off the phone 20 minutes ago with the CEO of a biotech company, who's one of our potential clients, and she said she is a PhD in bioscience, and she spends most of her time giving her executives therapy of some sort, right? And I said, well, how's that feel? And she said, well, a little bit unnatural, but when I think about it, it's actually the most important thing I can be doing, because the CEO, and this is kind of the crux of our work, the CEO's core job is enablement of other people in the company.
Enablement.
Right? Enablement, right? It's not actually to do the work yourself. Like a lot of bosses, they say, well, if you want something done right, you got to do it yourself. And that's when people get in this trap of like, they delegate something, they give really poor direction on what good looks like. It comes back, that's not what I wanted. And they end up doing it themselves, as opposed to sitting down saying, this is what good looks like. What do you need to get it done? When do you think you can have it done? Oh, 3 weeks from now? How about 2 weeks from now? Let's check in and see if you're almost there, right? Like a really good leader, a really good CEO is checking in along the way, is making sure people have what they need, and is 9 times out of 10, playing a little bit of therapist.
Yeah. I mean, and you've got to care about people. I mean, why do you think it's changed now with leading with the heart? I mean, I know the new generations, they wanted something more than maybe the boomers did. Gen X, I mean, we really don't give a shit because we're the greatest generation ever. But ever. And that will ride out through time from what I've seen. But get off my lawn, kids. Anyway, we love the Gen X and the millennials. But they seem to want something more. They want purpose. They want to know they're making a difference. They want to know that they're not just making a widget at work. They're changing the world and impacting the world, or maybe improving the quality of the future for their children. And boomers and Gen X were just like, who gives a fuck? But
just get her done.
But why have things changed? I mean, it seems like the old God, who was the guy? Peter Drucker sort of way of business was Machiavellian. It was the dark triads: Machiavellian, psychopathy, and narcissism. We see that displayed right now. What's going on with Elon Musk and other leaders.
Yeah, I think a lot of the folks in the workforce today, let's say like millennials, Gen Z, there's even some the next generation, I think they're calling them alpha, they're starting to enter the workforce. They do want something more. And I think they want something more because they saw their parents very unhappy. They saw their parents just like going to work, punching the clock, doing a job they didn't care about, buying the McMansion in the suburbs, having 2 or 3 cars in the garage, getting divorced. Like they lived through all this, right? As the children. And now they're like, you know what? I want to do something a little different with my life. I want a little bit more purpose. I want greater sense of community. I want to love what I do. And that's ultimately I think that's what Leading with Heart's about. That's what everybody really wants. Is they want to just love what they do.
Definitely. There's 5
Right?
behaviors that you have that transformative leaders engage in to connect
Yeah.
it with authenticity with their teams. Can you cite a couple off, maybe they're your
Yeah.
favorites, and give us a
Yeah.
explanation on them?
I mean, the first one, we start the book off just encouraging people to ask the question, what do you need to feel creative? And it's not just, hey, you employee, what do you need? But like, what do I need? What do I, as the reader, need to feel creative, right? Because if we're not getting our needs met, we're not going to be able to show up as our best selves. And our needs run the gamut, everything from like, are you sleeping well? Are you eating well? Are you, not drinking as much anymore? Like whatever it might be, to are you able to have emotionally connected conversations in the workplace? Are you getting recognition? Are you getting affirmation, right? There's a lot of talk in the last few years about psychological safety. That can be overdone, right? Sometimes they're putting so much energy into psychological safety that they develop this kind of lazy workforce where everyone wants to feel coddled, right? Which is the pendulum is maybe swung too far. Somewhere in the middle is a place where people feel supported but challenged, right? And that's really what inspires people to get a lot of work done. I think the second question in the book, the second challenge for leaders is to address fear in the workplace, right? What fears might be holding you back? Chris, every single negative behavior you see in the workplace is related to fear. You see people acting out, you see them hoarding resources, you see them trying to take credit, backstabbing, back channeling. All of it is about fear, right? So if we can understand fear, if we can kind of digest the fear and use it for a good purpose, which is, we're afraid of the competition, right? We're afraid of losing a client. That's maybe a good fear, but I'm afraid of my colleague. I'm afraid of not getting a promotion. I'm afraid of not getting the recognition I want. That's not a fear that we need in the workplace. So we really challenge leaders to confront those issues and take them on.
There you go.
Yeah.
Emotional intelligence seems to be the key word that a lot of people are using, and I think has really come into play. You've got to be a psychologist. You've got to be emotionally intelligent with yourself and with your employees.
That's right. Yeah. And emotional intelligence is all about understanding what you're feeling, understanding what other people might be feeling, and understanding the context between you.
Okay.
Right. And it's oftentimes, I've heard it described as a black box. The black box is the context and like the shared understanding. And when the black box is small, it means we're speaking different languages. We're not understanding each other. When the black box is really large, we have a perfect understanding of what each other is thinking and feeling and what each other is trying to express. And it's actually those little black boxes, those areas where people aren't getting curious about how others are feeling, aren't getting curious about, what are you hearing me say? I said I wanted this. What did you actually hear me say? Right? If we're not staying curious about each other, we're unable to work well together.
Yeah. One of the aspects you have that's in the book that's really interesting to me is adventure as a leadership tool. Talk to us about how you share your passion for surfing, snowboarding, sailing, etc., as stepping out of your comfort zone that helps fuel personal and professional growth. Do you do that for yourself or for your employees, et cetera, et cetera?
Yeah, I think I live a life of adventure. I love surfing and sailing, snowboarding, as you said. It feeds a certain part of me that I think makes me feel more creative, makes me feel more alive. And it also allows me to bring a certain level of like enthusiasm and playfulness into the workplace. And when I talk about adventure in the workplace, it's really about having the giving yourself the permission to take risks, right? To include some playfulness in the workplace, right? To do something completely out of character, out of the ordinary, and just to see what happens. I think one of the challenges we're facing is a lot of people play it too safe, Chris. They keep their cards really close to their chest. They try to show up, not raise too much attention for themselves. They try to just get the job done, punch the clock, and get out, right? And then they wonder why they're not happy with their job, or they wonder why they didn't get the promotion, or they wonder why the boss never remembers their name, right? I think it's important for all of us to give ourselves the permission to have a little adventure at work, to do something out of the ordinary, to run some experiments and maybe you fall flat on your face. Hopefully you work in a place where experimentation and failure is rewarded as opposed to punished.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean that's the other thing is curating that good sort of that good atmosphere, that good what's the word I'm seeking? Culture in your
Culture.
environment,
Yeah.
and making sure that there's that seed. We used to always have the rule: only the unanswered question, or the unanswered question. The only wrong question is the unanswered question, or something.
Unasked question.
Unasked question. There you go.
Yeah,
Thank you.
yeah.
Friday, the brain is
I hear you.
left for
I
the
hear you.
weekend. I
Yeah, it's
guess.
almost happy hour.
Yeah. Plus, I'm old, so the brain's gone already. But yeah, we used to tell all of our employees the only stupid question is the unasked question,
Mm-hmm.
and that was to get them to identify for us stuff they hadn't learned, maybe in training, or they missed, or something they needed to bring them up to speed. But they were fearful of that we'd be like, you idiot, did you
You
sleep
idiot.
through
Yeah.
training?
That's right.
What are you moron? You
Yeah.
haven't known this the whole time, and shaming someone for
Yeah.
maybe they missed something, or maybe they just need to get firmed up on something. They're like, why do we do this again?
Mm-hmm.
And so making it an environment where it was safe to ask questions, it was safe to say, I don't know how this works, really.
Mm-hmm. And you know what the most important thing is there, Chris? For
Mm-hmm.
leaders to show that they're not perfect too.
Mm-hmm.
If the leader can get up in front of the company and say, I need help,
Mm-hmm.
or if the leader can get up in front of the company and say, I don't know the answer to that.
No, yeah.
Perfect leaders indicate to everyone in the company that perfection is what gets rewarded.
Ah.
When you show up and you're looking so crisp and so coiffed and like everything is perfect speech, you never make a mistake, you always know the answer. Everyone in the company feels like, oh my gosh, that's the bar. That's what I need to live up to.
That's interesting.
One of my early teachers used to talk about conspicuous incompetence as a theme, as a practice, and it sounds very strange, right? It's like, why would you want to be conspicuously incompetent in anything? But he would do it purposefully as a leader of this organization to give everyone else permission to be incompetent sometimes too.
Hmm.
You know,
There you go.
yeah.
Yeah. It's the world has changed. I think leadership has changed. You have to be more dynamic. You have to be there for your people. You just can't rule by fiat anymore, and declare this is what the company is, and then behave otherwise. And people
That's right.
go, you're full of shit. The
Yeah, you
CEOs,
need buy-in. You need people to be excited about what you're doing as opposed to quietly undermining it.
yeah, it's pretty wild.
Yeah.
So, as we go out, tell us about your journey through life. How did you become an entrepreneur? How did you get to where you were in life?
Yeah. So my first career was actually in nonprofit management.
Mm-hmm.
I was 23 years old, running a nonprofit organization in New Mexico, trying to save wild lands and wild critters, and camping, sleeping out under the stars, 5 or 6 nights a month, being a wild man in Santa Fe, New Mexico. Really fun. And then I oddly got recruited into politics, and I spent about 7, 8 years flying around the world with a guy named James Carville. I don't know if you know him,
Yeah.
the Raging Cajun.
Yeah.
So I was James Carville's protege, my late 20s and early 30s, doing different presidential races around the world.
Wow.
And eventually ended up in Silicon Valley, did about 10 years in Silicon Valley. And at some point along the way, one of my business school classmates asked me to coach her,
Mm-hmm.
which I thought was a very strange request because we were friends, we were, classmates, colleagues. And she said, no, you've got something that I want, which is the ability to like speak comfortably in public and like correct yourself when you have to and don't get flustered. And she said, and you've also worked with all these crazy politicians. You must be able, if you've helped people get elected president, you can probably help me get a promotion. And it just kind of snowballed from there, Chris. It was like, that was 12 years ago. And I've been running Velocity for the last 10 years.
Mm-hmm.
And, it's been incredible. It's been this organic journey where, one day the CEO of Geico called and said, hey, I'd like you to be my coach. And, dozens, I think at this point, we've worked with hundreds of CEOs, and I've personally worked with, 5 or 6 dozen of them. And it's just been unbelievable watching people go through this transformation and then transforming their companies as a result.
There you go. The old James Carville.
Old James, Raging Cajun.
Yeah,
Fun
Raging
guy.
Cajun. What a guy. I never thought that him and Mary Madeline would ever marry or get together. That was wild.
That was wild. And you know what? They were incredible together. So I would
Yeah,
go out
they
to
are.
the weekend, like spend the weekend with them. And like he'd be helping her on her talking points for things she's doing with Karl Rove.
Really?
She'd be helping him with his talking points on something he's doing on CNN that night. They were completely helping. It was like, all's fair. I think that's what the title of the book was.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
I always cite that. I'm like, if those two can get along, the head of Bush's and the head of Clinton's thing, and they can find a way to love each other, maybe there's hope for the rest of us.
Maybe there's hope. Exactly.
There you go. So as we go out, give people the final pitch to pick up the book. I think, do we want to tease out a book you're working on now?
We can tease it a little bit. And if listeners have any ideas, or if there's any CEOs listening to this and would like to be interviewed for it, I'm in the middle of doing a massive research project, Chris. My goal is to talk to 150 CEOs this year. I already have 50 scheduled. And the question I'm asking them is, where do you find the most friction in your business? Because my theory is that, the name of my company is Velocity, right? And there's two components to velocity. There's propulsion minus friction equals velocity. Mm-hmm. And most CEOs spend all their time talking about propulsion. How much money have I raised? How many people can I hire? How much of our product have we sold? What's our product roadmap? They almost never talk about the friction. But as a coach, I spend 90% of my time extracting friction from organizations. Mm-hmm. So this book is all about the friction. And it's all about, the little places where just a little bit of friction, it slowly adds up and compounds and grinds the whole organization to a halt. So That's the teaser. That's what it's going to be about.
There you go.
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much for coming to the show, Edward. We really appreciate it.
Really had a good time with you. Thank you so much.
You got it. Folks, order of the book wherever fine books are sold. It is called Leading with Heart, 5 Conversations That Unlock Creativity, Purpose, and Results, out June 21st, 2022. And follow Edward so you can find out for his next book launches and other things he does and all that good stuff. Thanks for tuning in. Go to goodreads.com/Chris Voss, LinkedIn.com/Chris Voss, Chris Voss 1, the TikTokity, and all those crazy places on the internet. Be good to each other. Stay safe. We'll see you next time.